Bonjour, beautiful young minds. Welcome to our world. I don't know why the earth always seems still when we're just hanging out, but every time I jump into outer space and admire Earth, I get dizzy from watching it spinning. Can you see where you are? Okay, how about we look at a map for a while instead? Ah, now I can tell what everything is. Almost. Ever been to France? You know the Eiffel Tower? It just so happens that Mary Mass the magician will be performing at the North Nunoonu. If you want to see Mary Mass's marvelous magic, RSVP, and her sisters Virginia and Carolina will pick you up at the deli of the CDG airport. Wait, what just happened? Oops, I'm rambling while ambling again. Explain. I shall. I developed this mnemonic or memory aid to help us memorize the 13 colonies. But first, to make it easier for us to remember the names of the colonies, which are now states. Let's touch on a tiny bit of history, shall we? The colonists were groups of people from Britain who journeyed across the Atlantic Ocean to what is now the United States of America, in search of new, better, and more opportunities. On May 14th, 1607, the first group of English colonists arrived at a place that they named Jamestown, which is now Virginia. Then, in 1620, 13 years later, the Pilgrims arrived in what is now Plymouth, Massachusetts. Over the next 113 years, other colonists eventually made their way to America, and in 1733, the last group settled in what is now Georgia. Now notice that every settlement was on the East Coast. Okay, now think about the last time you tried to memorize a series of numbers, dates, letters, or words that seemed random. Speaking of which, how many of us can recite the planets in order from the sun outward? Difficult, right? We need an algorithm to help us make sense of things. So, a bit of geographical information will help us narrow down our focus. Let's look at these colonies and take the first letter of each. At first glance, this is what we have: 2 M's, 4 N's, CDG, and RSVP. Perhaps we can simplify this further. Ooh, I recognize RSVP. Doesn't it mean please respond in French? That's it! When we receive invitations to birthday parties or other events, the invitations usually have RSVP at the bottom. This reminds us to let the host know if we plan to attend so that the host can have enough goodies for everyone. RSVP, I see. Well, let's just see about that RSVP. The only R state is Rhode Island. The only S state on the East Coast is South Carolina. V is a little difficult, but thank goodness Mary Mass's sister Virginia is here to help us with, well, Virginia. Pennsylvania, please, it's the only P. Now, going up, we have CDG. These initials stand for Charles de Gaulle, who was a French World War II leader and who later served as the President of France. To honor Charles de Gaulle, France named their primary international airport in Paris after President Charles de Gaulle, which is why the airport is often referred to as the CDG airport. The only C state on the East Coast is Connecticut. Delaware is the only D state, and Georgia is the only G state. Moving on up again, we have 2 M's and 4 N's. We know that 2 comes before 4 on the number line, and M comes before N in the alphabet, so let's say 2M, 4N. We have 8 M states, so that's where Magician Mary Mass comes in, to help us remember Maryland and Massachusetts. We also have 8 N states, but of those, only 4 start with new. And the only new state that is not on the East Coast is New Mexico. The remaining 3 new states listed alphabetically are New Hampshire, New Jersey, and New York. Lastly, we have only 2 states start with North. And since North Dakota is not on the East Coast, that leaves North Carolina. That further makes sense because we had South Carolina to help us earlier, not to mention Mary Mass's other sister, Carolina. Now that we've turned this seemingly random bunch of letters into meaningful facts, let's recite our mnemonic from top to bottom. Ready? 2. M. For in CDG. RSVP. Magnifique. Alrighty then. Who's ready for some magic? Remember, Mary Mass the Magician will be performing at the North Nunoonu, RSVP, and her sisters Virginia and Carolina will pick you up at the deli of the CDG airport.